Welcome to Kebo Say Hello. This podcast series, brought to you by the National Museum of Natural Science in Taichung, Taiwan, takes you on journeys through the natural world that span geography and time, from the very small to the gigantic, from the past to even our future. I'm your host, Dr. Audrey, and we've got a colorful and wondrous world of flowers and pollinators for you today. Let's get going. So here's a fun fact before we get started. The island of Taiwan, where I am right now, is also home to about 400 species of butterflies. More than 1/8 of these butterfly species are endemic to Taiwan, which means they live nowhere else in the world, only here on our beautiful island. Because of this rich biodiversity, Taiwan is known as the Butterfly Kingdom. Many of these butterflies can be seen in our museum and our botanical garden. I hope you have the chance to visit us someday. So why are we talking about butterflies? Well, butterflies are one of the most common pollinators that we see when we look around the natural world. Pollinators and flowers are closely linked to one another. In fact, they depend on each other. And we, humans, depend on them. So what are pollinators? Pollinators are animals or insects, such as butterflies, that help plants make seeds. Seeds, of course, are important because they help plants make more plants through the process of reproduction. When we think of pollinators, most of us think of insects like bees and butterflies. Sometimes we think about moths and beetles. But some birds, like hummingbirds, and even mammals, like bats, can also be pollinators. Imagine a bee flying to a flower. I'll bet you're thinking, wait, hang on. Why is the bee visiting the flower? Here's a hint. Have you ever wondered what a bee eats? Flowers make nectar, which is a sugary liquid that bees and other pollinators use for energy. So it's a food source. When we get back to our busy bee, the bee lands on the flower to collect the nectar. While the bee drinks the nectar, it gets covered in pollen. Pollen is a powdery and sometimes sticky substance that flowers also make. It comes from the center of the flower. So our bee has landed, but now it's eaten and it's ready to move on to another flower so it can get even more nectar. Remember though, the bee is now covered in pollen as it takes flight. It finds a new flower to land on. And when our bee lands on the new flower, it carries some of the pollen from its last flower to the new one. Some of this pollen falls off the bee and into the new flower. This process, called pollination, is how flowers can make seeds. So why is pollination so important? Pollination helps make seeds so plants can make more plants. But for us humans, there is another reason why we depend so much on this exchange between animal pollinators and flowers. Many of the foods we eat come from plants that need pollinators. Can you think of some? Some foods that you might eat every day come from pollinators. Foods such as apples, bananas, strawberries, peaches, and even coffee. So how are you feeling now after our discussion about pollinators and flowers? You might answer, I'm feeling excited and curious to learn more. You might also answer, I'm feeling really energized. Or you could say, I'm feeling as fresh as a daisy. I really love this expression, especially with today's conversation. A daisy, spelled D-A-I-S-Y, is a flower, and it's a favorite of bee pollinators. While there are many different kinds of daisies, most of us imagine a flower with a bright yellow round center, surrounded by many white petals. The daisy flower opens its petals in the morning and closes them at night every day. And this process is what makes the flower look fresh and new. So this is how you would use the expression. For example, I got a full night's sleep last night and I'm feeling as fresh as a daisy. I'm ready for the week. Or you might be in conversation with somebody, such as, "What did you do during the lunch break today? You look so happy." "Well, I went for a swim at the pool and I'm as fresh as a daisy." Bees and butterflies are not the only pollinators that are out in the natural world. Just like daisies are only one kind of flower that depends on pollinators to make seeds. To learn more about this important relationship, your local pollinators and flowers, and how you can help pollinators where you live, visit your local community garden, a botanical garden, or a museum. So here's a quick recap of what we talked about today. Pollinators are animals and insects that help flowers by spreading pollen. Pollinators visit flowers to drink nectar and collect the pollen. We humans depend on pollinators for food. 1/3 of our food sources actually depend on the process of pollination. There are many things we can do to help pollinators where we live. What will you do? Well, I'm certainly feeling as fresh as a daisy and ready for our next episode. Tune in next week, and I'll see you then. Bye!